All right, welcome everyone. We know many people flew in, so it's like a really big deal for us that you're here. This is a big day for us. We started working on this about 5 years ago, and back then we really believed that something like this should exist in an AI future that we all want to live in. And so not only do we think what we do is critical, we also think it's very, very timely. And that is why one of the main themes of today is about scale and how we can get all the products and services that we build to many, many more people in the next years. But before we talk about the actual products, we wanted to talk a little bit about why we are even here, why we started this, and what is top of mind for us. And with that, Sam, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Great. Nice to see all of you. So we started this a long time ago with a belief that at the time seemed very unusual, which was that AI progress was about to go very rapid. And we thought that if AI happened, if AI fulfilled the dream, when we still have a long way to go, but we've made a lot of progress since, then it was going to be the most powerful tool that humans had yet created. It would change the economy, it would change society in all sorts of ways. And the thing that we hoped for the most with AI, and the things we wanted to build around AI, is that AI would really accelerate people. This idea that AI was a tool that people would use, not an entity on its own, and that people were going to be able to do things in the world that they just couldn't have done before. And we started thinking about the infrastructure that society was going to need if AI really started to happen. You know, what does it take to get to this great outcome for the world? We could imagine a world back then, and even more now, with lots of AI tools that let people do far more than they ever could before, lots of AI agents off doing things, and one thing we thought for sure is that the world was going to need a new layer of infrastructure for this to be able to happen. That you wanted the ability to verify humanity. You wanted to know who the people were. You wanted to be able to provide great infrastructure for humans and agents to be sending resources back and forth and doing all sorts of things and communicating with each other. And we thought that maybe if there were a way to build a new network, that it would be a powerful step forward towards doing this.
And so with that, we came up with a simple plan. And that plan didn't change much since then, and I don't think it will change much going forward. And it had 4 big steps. That's it. The first one was about building a proof of human system that can be deployed globally. It is fully anonymous. Then second, use that infrastructure to launch a digital token by giving ownership in it to eventually every human, and use that to get the network to critical scale. Then third, continuously scale and decentralize the network to then eventually, among many other great things that we hope this network will do, use it to make the benefits of AI accessible to everyone. And so we did one. We developed World ID, which we think is that proof of human on internet scale. We launched the token last July, which brought us to step number 2. And so currently we are at 3. And that means that a big, big focus of what we do is the continuous scale and decentralization of the network. And Sam, one of the big things you brought to the company very early on was this conviction about scale. And to me and a couple other team members, back then this felt very scary because it's like very counter to usual startup advice. That's not what you usually do. But you had a lot of conviction about that, and I gained it over time. But you want to talk about why that is?
Not always, but surprisingly often, I have found that scale is this very important emergent property across all sorts of things. You want to scale neural networks. You want to scale like companies. You want to scale crypto networks. You want to scale all sorts of things. And human intuition, for whatever reason, seems to consistently undervalue the emergent properties of scale across all of these things. So one joke that I use sometimes is, when in doubt, scale it up. It doesn't work for everything, but I think it's an interesting default. And one of the things that we've talked about with WorldCoin is we want to see what happens when we do this at mass scale. If we're going to build infrastructure for all people, it's great that we've signed up so many, but there's like 99.9% left to go. Alex will talk about progress there, but scale has a really important quality across all of these things, and it has been a principle that we've been driving towards.
All right. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
So, well, how are we doing on that? Currently, every 2 seconds, someone new is joining the network. We are at 15 million total users, 7 million of which verified with an orb. And one other thing that we really care about is the density of the network, because we think that makes it useful for developers and us to build products that are actually critical and useful to people. We are now at 1 out of 7 in Santiago and Lisbon, just 2 examples, and even 1 out of 3 of adults in Buenos Aires, Argentina that are verified. And so while this is exciting and kind of something to be proud of from where we came from, this is, of course, just the bare beginning, just like truly the super early beginnings of what we're trying to do, because the mission here is to truly bring the service to every human. And the first step of the plan talked about proof of human. And 5 years ago, this sounded like this abstract thing, because Alan Turing, as many of you know here, in the 50s, proposed a very important test, the Turing test. And for many decades, this was seen as this like massive major milestone that maybe eventually AI will pass. I remember when I was a student, my professors were talking about this and like how this is like decades out. But in the last 12 months, we actually passed the Turing test. And this is a really big deal. Not only did we do that, we are also now entering a time in which we are about to have almost real-time generated video content. We will have photos and these kinds of things. And actually, for most of the situations, this is going to be super exciting because it will make content better suited to what we like. It will be super entertaining, but it will also require us to rethink how we as a society operate. We need to rethink how we do elections, how we run our democracies, and even how we use the services that we love, like our social networks. And so with that, we think we need a new test, and that is a proof of human. And we think we need it now. But thinking about this now for a couple of years, it is unfortunately much harder than it initially seems. Many of the immediate ideas you might have to solve the problem actually don't work. They just break for one reason or the other. You could think about using phone cameras. You could think about potentially using government IDs, maybe using Face ID. None of those actually work. And given we really care about this problem and we think it's critical to achieve our ultimate mission, we took it very serious. And we came to this like super, super painful realization very early in the project that we will likely have to distribute physical hardware around the world. And not only that, we have to open it up so many other companies, many other parties can join us in building these devices. And probably in like many different shapes, probably integrated into hardware devices that already exist or you already use. But this is very likely what will need to happen because the current infrastructure, the current systems that are out there just don't work for that particular problem. And that's why we built the Orb, which is an inclusive and secure, as well as an anonymous way to solve that proof of human problem at global scale. And today, we will talk about the next generation of the Orb, something we worked on really hard for quite a while, and I'm really excited about. And so with that, we're going to hear first from Thomas, the designer behind the actual Orb, and then from Rich, who actually is manufacturing and building and engineering these devices.
Today, I'm incredibly excited to announce our new Orb and the spaces it will live in. The Orb is a very important part of our experience that we deliver to our users. It's where the user first meets us. So it's a very special moment, a moment where you prove that you are you, that you are human. The spaces we introduce today are the places where this Orb will live. It's a bit of a temple, a place to visit to get verified, but it's also designed with the values of a public space. It's inviting, simple, peaceful. It's focusing on the user, on the Orb, and the verification.
So here it is. Here's the new Orb. So besides being just incredibly beautiful, It was designed from the ground up with scale in mind. The entire software stack was completely rewritten for all orbs to enable verifications 3 times faster than before. The new orb was designed with 30% fewer parts, and it enables us to assemble them at twice the speed. Initially, we're tripling the production capacity of the orb, with plans to increase that even further with new assembly partners and locations around the world. We're making progress towards the ultimate goal of decentralized orb manufacturing. The latest orb is built with the NVIDIA Jetson architecture, which has 5 times the AI performance over the previous generation. It's capable of 100 trillion operations per second. So this enables the new orb to execute sophisticated AI models that prove humanness and operate entirely on device, and even faster than before. The new orb was built with more transparency and the ability to audit the code that's running on it. It has a fully removable SD card that contains all the operating instructions. So anyone can compare those instructions on the SD card versus our published source code. But to provide access to every human, we need more orbs. Lots more orbs, probably on the order of 1,000 times more orbs than we have today. Not only more orbs, but more orbs in more places. And I want to talk about a few ways we're going to achieve that today. Firstly, we'll continue to expand our operations into even more countries than we're in today. I'm excited to share the flagship locations with you today also. These are premium verification experiences. We have staff there available to answer any questions people have. We've opened our first 2 flagship locations in Buenos Aires and Mexico City just a couple weeks ago. This is our Mexico City location that opened just a few weeks back. I think they really look amazing. Next, we're expanding access to orbs through self-serve verifications. Think of these as orbs inside existing retail locations, so your neighborhood convenience store or local coffee shop like you see behind me. These enable people to both discover the project through seeing an orb in a retail environment or specifically going to that retail store with the intent to verify with an orb. These partnerships are key to scaling the orb locations and getting more distributed in a region. They're providing access to even more people than we do today. And if you don't want to go find an orb, that's OK. So starting today, we're announcing a new feature called Orb on Demand. This will enable anyone with the touch of a button to request an orb come to them. Much like a pizza you would have delivered to your apartment, you can push a button, it shows up at your door, and that driver then leaves the food behind. And I'm incredibly excited to announce a brand new partnership with Rappi, the #1 delivery service in Latin America. They're integrating with our app, and they'll dispatch their existing delivery fleet to bring orbs to anyone who wants to verify whenever they want to. And lastly, I want to talk about a new type of operator we're starting today called community operators. So anyone can rent or buy the new orb to verify anyone in their community. We'll have a website up. You can place your pre-order, and starting in the spring of 2025, it'll be delivered to you. In fact, I want all of you guys here today to be our first community operators. Everyone here will get an orb. So we made these amazing metal cards that we're going to distribute afterwards. And of course, we're going to use World ID to equitably distribute these cards to everyone. We want to make sure everyone gets their orb and no one's able to redeem 2 of them. So all you'll need is a World ID. We'll have a station in the back. And if you don't have one yet, that's OK. There are lots of orbs available after the presentation. So go use your World ID and be our first community operators. So with that, I'll turn it over to Alex.
All right, thank you, Rich. One thing I'm really, really excited about is something we talked about for a long time, which is opening up the operations to truly everyone. And I think that will change how the network functions and will drastically scale it up. And of course, you're going to be the first of these community operators. So this is exciting too. So let's talk about World ID. We talked about proof of human. We talked about the importance of it. But how you actually use it and how other services integrate it is World ID. And World ID will be the anonymous human layer for the internet. But there's a lot of details that go into making that actually work. And so today, we will release the next version of World ID 3.0. And I will give it over to Adrian to talk about what that includes. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate that you acknowledge there's some details that we need to work through. Alex is prone to saying it's a simple plan. We'll just make an anonymous layer for the internet, and it'll work. It's not quite that simple. We also throw around the word protocol quite a lot. And within the organization, the reason that we do that is because it's a commitment. It's a commitment to making sure that we're building something that benefits all of humanity. It's something that's open, permissionless, decentralized, accessible to any developer, any operator, any manufacturer to enhance their current business or to build potentially new businesses. And that's not one company. That's a foundation for lots of people to interact with the web. It truly is that anonymous layer, the anonymous human layer for the internet. But even that is a pretty big, pretty detailed statement to make. And if I had said a year ago to a crowd of people, all of you very security-minded, very concerned about privacy, you would have said, it's just not possible. And I think you probably would have been right at the time. It wasn't possible. How we would build something that would scale to 7 million users, much less the billion that we're targeting over the next several years, is just not possible a year ago. And yet when we went and talked to the team of cryptographers at WorldCoin Foundation, they said, that's interesting. It might be possible. And they began to think about it. Remco, Philip, how do we use existing technologies that don't quite scale, that don't quite operate at the level that we want them to work, and build something that becomes part of the protocol? And they started experimenting with something called secure multi-party compute. Earlier this year, we talked about the fact that we were beginning to see the path towards using secure multi-party compute to build something that would allow data to be decentralized across several different parties, so there wouldn't be one single entity or even two entities or any individual entity that could see that data. It wouldn't be held by the WorldCoin Foundation. It wouldn't be held by any one company. And as we began going through that experimentation, we began to publish research and began to understand what was possible, we developed something that we're now calling the anonymized multi-party computation. The key attribute that it provides is the ability to take a piece of data, know whether it is unique, but know nothing else about that piece of data on an individual basis. Multi-party is a really important part of this because the data is broken into pieces that can't be brought back together and shared with different parties, and then through a lot of math that Remco will talk about a little bit later today, gives us that key attribute of it being anonymous. Multi-party is a critical part of multi-party computation, as you might expect, right? And it's important that none of the parties that are going to be holding the data that's necessary for the system to work are going to be centralized. Over the last year, we've worked to find parties that we think provide certain key attributes. They have to be trustworthy. They have to be globally distributed. They have to be independent from one another. At this time, we're announcing 3 partners who are already beginning the process of standing up infrastructure and onboarding the data that's necessary. Those are Berkeley's Center for Responsible Decentralized Intelligence, based here in California. I'm actually a Cal alum myself. FAU, based in Germany, and Nethermind, a global blockchain and crypto security company that has an incredible amount of respect in that community. In addition to that, we're working with the University of Zurich to finalize terms to begin onboarding them as well. By November of this year, we expect that all of the data that is behind World ID will be held by those parties, broken into pieces in such a way that no one of them is able to tell anything about that data other than answering the question, is this unique? The core to our uniqueness service. Now, I build infrastructure for a living, I do security for a living, I do privacy for a living. I could spend, in fact, I'm obligated to spend all day, every day, thinking about those problems. But what's more exciting than thinking about those is thinking about how you can begin using that uniqueness attribute, anonymized and at internet scale, to enable new use cases. How many of you have a driver's license in your pocket? How many of you borrowed a passport off of one of your friends earlier today? Thank you, Ajay. I promise I'll give it back. I can't actually use anything about it. We'll go into the details of that in just a minute. One of the important attributes to understanding whether or not a government credential is real is whether it's the one instance of that government credential. Uniqueness at scale is one of the challenges in being able to use credentials issued by government authorities in any meaningful way on the internet. There are other challenges as well. That driver's license, how many of you have tried to buy beer with your driver's license recently? I know you don't all look as young as I look. Did the person that was selling you the beer say, 155 pounds? Yeah, maybe you don't need this beer. Did they say, oh, I know somebody that lives on your block? Because you've got your address on your driver's license. Currently, the way that we use credentials on the internet is we disclose all of the information that those credentials use in order to answer one simple question. Are you over 18, and should you have access to this content? Or, if you're trying to participate in some process provided by your government, are you a citizen of your government? You don't need to answer anything more than that. In fact, there are reasons why anonymity is critical for those kinds of interactions and so important. So, uniqueness gives us the ability to determine that the document is real. Anonymity gives you the willingness to actually use the information contained in that document. So today, we're beginning a beta of World ID credentials. And there's two characteristics that I think are critically important here that I want to point out. This is only possible because of the scale and anonymity that AMPC provides. So we think we're unique in the ability to make this possible, but of course it's going into the protocol, so anybody can take advantage of it, anybody can use it, and we would encourage anybody and everybody to do that. The second attribute, because we are so committed to privacy, that passport information is only ever going to be on your phone. We're not copying it up into the cloud. We're not making an instance of it and putting it into the back end. You will hold the information about your passport on your device, and AMPC will be used to do uniqueness check. An incredible way to provide private access and the ability to interact in an anonymous way while providing the ability to verify certain attributes that are critical to access online services, truly adding to that experience. We're rolling out in a number of countries. Today, United States passports work. Today, passports from a number of other countries are also in development, and we're rolling them out over the next couple of weeks. Now, this isn't just about being able to tell more about yourself and interactions online. It's also about providing access to the network to people who otherwise can't get to it. Now, Rich's team has built a lot of orbs. I'm not going to give away any secret numbers. But it's also the case that there just aren't enough of them out there right now. And there aren't enough users able to get to them as quickly as we would like. And so we think the ability to onboard to the network by using a unique ID and a unique document will allow us to accelerate the growth of the number of people that are on the network. So that's a critical capability as well. Of course, they won't have used an orb. So we won't really know they're human. We just know that they're a thing that has a passport. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we also check to make sure that the image that's on that passport matches the image of the person that's using their phone. That'll become more important in just a moment. Because I shouldn't be able to enroll with Ajay's passport, right? Uniqueness at a global scale, having anonymity at a global scale is critically important. In addition to beginning to think through how to use existing government credentials, we're also beginning the process of understanding how it is that this World ID can be incorporated into the digital identity infrastructure that's being built in other countries. There are 2 countries right now where we're the furthest along in those conversations, where we have MOUs and partnerships that have been established, and we're talking with legislators, policymakers, and think tanks in those countries to identify how it is that World ID can be connected to their digital infrastructure and allow the citizens in those countries to have basically better services. I want to thank, we have a member, we care a lot about anonymity and privacy, so I'm not going to point them out, but we do have a member here of the legislature from Taiwan. And I want to thank them for coming here. We're really excited about the opportunity that we've had to work with you so far, and I think it's going to be incredible what it is that we're able to do together. I don't know about you, but at least for the last 4 or 5 years, I've spent far too much time in video conferencing. Is that true for anybody else? Maybe a few of you. Is there anybody that's currently video conferencing that's here? I'm a security person. The news that I read is different from everybody else's. That's kind of the way of silos these days. One of the things that I've heard about 4 or 5 times over the last year is an instance of a member of a company working in the finance department receiving an urgent call or an urgent text. It says, get on Zoom. This is your CEO or this is your CFO. We need to have a conversation. Okay, unexpected, but doesn't seem scammy because I'm going to get on a Zoom with them and I'm going to interact with them and I'm going to learn what it is that's being asked for. And that member of the finance department then having an interaction where they're told we need to transfer money, and it's their CEO. They're talking to their CEO. It's their CFO. They're talking to them. It's their voice. It's their face. It's a real interaction. Now, it probably hasn't happened to any of you. If it has, I want to know more details about it. But it's something that we're concerned about. It's certainly something that we're beginning to think about, and it has started to happen in the real world. World ID is in a unique position for a few reasons. The first is that it's the only system right now that at a global scale is endeavoring to have a trusted interaction where an image of a person is being captured, signed, and then being made available in an anonymous, trustworthy way. That's actually a very, very unique technical attribute of the system. The other thing that we announced earlier this year, originally part of World ID 2.0, currently available, was Face-Off, where we use the image that's contained in that personal custody package captured by the orb and made available and held on the user's device to do a comparison to make sure that the person who's interacting with the device is actually the same as the person who originally signed up. That authentication is really critical for being able to decide where they can interact on the internet. And so, as we were looking at this challenge of deepfakes, we began thinking, is this something that we can help solve? And it turns out we can. We can connect those two things together, combined with a challenge being issued by the person who wants to make sure that the person they're interacting with in a given transaction is actually the same face as what it is that they're seeing online, or what it is that's been presented to them in the past. And so we call that World ID Deepface. We're announcing it today. We're working on a beta of it right now, which is going to be coming out very shortly. The implementation is, of course, as an SDK. We want to make it possible for anyone to incorporate it directly into their application, make it as seamless as possible, tie into your infrastructure within your enterprise, make it part of your Active Directory or whatever LDAP system it is that you're using to sort of bring it together and make it as seamless as possible. But in addition to that, we want to make it available so people can begin playing with it and understanding how it works right now. So we're announcing a beta, and the beta is an integration with existing applications, right? You and the devices that you're using right now will be able to work with this beta. We'll be able to confirm that the person you're interacting with is the one that you think you're interacting with in an online conversation. And it will work with all of the applications that currently use video. So it's not dedicated to any one of them. Very excited to make that announcement as well. And with that, I'll hand it off to Alex. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Adrian. A lot of new things about AD 3.0. I'm actually particularly excited about AMPC because it was such a big push for the last couple months, and it was really not obvious that we're going to make it work. And the fact that not even Tools for Humanity WorldCoin Foundation is part of their computation, I think is a really big deal. But let's talk more about blockchains. So Adrian mentioned that what we are building is an actual protocol, not a company. And that is confusing in a lot of different ways on how you run a company and kind of how we can contribute. But what it also means is that the underlying infrastructure needs to be decentralized. And that is what blockchains allow us to do. But over the last year, as we continued scaling, we hit the limits of what Ethereum L2s were able to do. And that was really unfortunate. It became very expensive to operate a network. And that's why we announced WorldChain. Because we have a proof of human, we can do things that other blockchains are not able to do. We can give free transactions to real humans, and therefore we can make it much more scalable. And of course, we also have our own infrastructure that we can adapt to our own needs. WorldChain is launching today. And with that, I will give it to W from the WorldCoin Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Hello, everybody. WorldCoin Foundation is super impressed Tools for Humanity has been doing with everything, with all the work Tools for Humanity has been doing to grow the project. That work means that today, WorldChain is launching with 15 million human users, one of the biggest blockchains in the world on day one. Everything users and developers need, on-ramps, off-ramps, all the mission-critical integrations are all already there. And it's obviously only going to grow from here. All of this is secured by Ethereum, which we also think is the best possible way and the big deal. And to get ready for the first billion users, 50 million WLD has been committed to WorldCoin Foundation grants program. This is really big opportunity for developers to build with us. We have whole deep dive on WorldChain and what we can build together on the stage with Liam Horn at 12:30. Join us. And now Alex will show you how we can actually use the network. Thank you so much.
All right, so we talked about infrastructure, protocol, and many somewhat complicated sounded things, but we didn't talk a lot about how to actually use it. And I'm actually convinced that over the coming years, many of the apps and services that you use will start using the underlying WorldCoin infrastructure in one way or the other. And you won't even notice it, you won't even know about it. And so very much like the internet, there's going to be many different browsers and they will do all kinds of different things. But that's why we make it even much easier to integrate with WorldCoin. Like it's already possible today, but somewhat painful, takes a lot of time, and we heard that from many apps. And so that's why in Q1, we're releasing WalletKit as an SDK to make that much easier. We're already working closely with important and big partners to make that happen. But of course, in the beginning, last year, we had to build our own client because, of course, there was not anyone else. And that's why we started working on World App. And already today, World App is actually the third largest crypto wallet in the world. But that's, again, just the bare beginning. We are aiming for billions of users. And today, we are talking about World App 3.0, which hopefully will make it much more exciting and useful to you. Thank you.
We've been blown away by the response to World App since we launched it last year. And today, we're going to take it to the next level with World App 3.0. World App 3.0 has been redesigned from the ground up with one goal in mind: to make the WorldCoin network even more useful for your day-to-day life. It starts with World ID, your internet human identity. You can see whether you're verified, and if you're not, you can use the app to find an orb near you to be able to get verified. Now, of course, beyond orb verifications, World App now also supports the new World ID credentials, which means that you can now add things like your passport or your driver's license to your World ID to be able to prove things about yourself in the internet without compromising your anonymity. And lastly, World App will, of course, later this fall, allow you to prove not only that you're a real and unique person, but that you are who you say you are, powered by World ID Deepface. Something else we wanted to do with this version of World App was to make it easier to interact with other people on the network. And so we're adding a tab where you can look up anyone by their username, or if you want to, connect your phone contacts so it's even easier to find your friends and do things like send them a transfer. Lastly, World App has a wallet built right into it. It allows you to use things like WorldCoin, digital dollars, and other crypto assets, and people love it. In fact, since we launched it last year, people have already performed more than 150 million verifications that count for more than $1.5 billion in volume, not even including people claiming WorldCoin. And today, that's going to get even better, because the new version of the wallet is built on WorldChain and is able to process transactions up to 90% faster than before. That means that you will, for the first time, be able to use World App not only to send money to your friends across the world in an instant without any fees, but also be able to pay at merchants by scanning a QR code, or even in online shops, like powered by Shopify, using your WorldCoin and your wallet balance. Now, my personal favorite new feature of the wallet is the Vault. The Vault allows you to lock away some funds for the future and earn a little bit along the way. I've been testing it for the past few months, and honestly, it's just super fun sometimes to just open the app and see your balance tick up every second without having to do any work. This is truly what the future should look like. Now, as we built all of these new products and services into World App, it was important to us not only that they were simple and useful, but also that they didn't compromise on the things that matter for the network. This means being able to use World App fully anonymously, making sure that your important data and wallet keys are only stored on your device, so you have full control over how to use it and who to share it with. And of course, making sure that it's inclusive. Because if you want to build a network that can reach everyone, you need to have an app that works for everyone. This includes things like making sure that it's localized to dozens of languages and supports more than 50 currencies. And yes, even supporting as many phones as possible, some of them up to 10 years old. We're very proud of all of these new features that we're building to World App with the wallet, the ID, and the contacts. And honestly, if we had left it there, this would have already been by far the biggest release of the app. But of course, we didn't stop there. So today, I'm very excited to share with you that we're going to introduce mini apps to World App. Mini apps are third-party applications that you can explore and use right from inside of the app, and they can integrate deeply with your World ID, with your wallet, and with your contacts to provide you a new type of products and services that were not possible before. So let's look at what they look like. Starting today, when you open World App, you'll be greeted by a new Apps tab, where you can see the apps that you have installed, and they're ready to be used just one tap away. When you want a new app, you can simply go to the App Store. You can explore things by categories, search, or even the top charts. And when you see something that you're interested in, you can tap it to look into the details, knowing that you can trust things like how many people are using it, or that the ratings are real, because all of this is powered by World ID. So let's look at a few examples so that you can get a better sense of the type of things you can do with mini apps. The first one is a polls app. It's super simple. It allows you to create a poll, share it on your social media, and for the first time ever, know that the results are actually real and they aren't being skewed by bots that are trying to go one way or another. Now, it doesn't all have to be serious. It turns out that games are also way better when they're built on top of a human network. It's just much more fun to play against real humans rather than bots that are cheating. My personal favorite is Flappy Orb, and you should check it out. And it is, of course, just as hard as the classic game that this is inspired by. Now, just as mini apps can integrate deeply with World ID to be able to provide unique services, they can also integrate deeply with your contacts and your wallet. So an example of that is WorldChat. WorldChat is a messaging application. It's encrypted. It's built on top of the World Network. That means you can text anyone by their username or with your contacts. And you can, of course, do things like attach a picture or a voice memo on the spot. But because it's connected to your wallet, you can also just attach money right then and there. You can send money right on the spot across the world without any fees, without any pain. And of course, because WorldChat is running inside of World App, you also know whether the person that you're texting with is a verified human. So if they are, you'll see them coming up with a blue bubble. And if they're not, there will be a gray bubble. And so, which is super useful to just know when you need to be more careful in different conversations. Now, these are just a few examples of the endless number of things you could build with these new primitives. And we can't wait to see what developers build with this. If you're curious about how to build a mini app, there will be a full session dedicated to that later today. Now, the last thing I want to say about mini apps is while they're, of course, a way for you to be able to do more things today, we also see them as a foundation for you to be able to delegate some of these tasks to your AI agents in the near future. And we'll have more to share on this next year. So that's World App 3.0. It's a super app for humans built on your identity, finance, and community. It's going to be available today, and we can't wait for all of you to try it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Thiago. World App 3.0, really, really exciting. Mini apps. We'll be really excited to see what you're going to build with that. But to quickly summarize, as I mentioned right in the beginning, today's through line was all about scale. And we talked about a new orb. We talked about World App 3.0. We talked about World Chain and World App 3.0. But another question is, what can this be? Where is it going? What is next? So just from my perspective, I've never felt more urgency ever in my life. I think what we do is very, very timely. And so we as a company really run as fast as we can. And I hope we can get these things as fast as we can to as many people as possible. But Sam, you have seen things like that play out much more often. What do you think?
Look, it's always hard to internalize exponential curves. The joke, but I think the thing that is true is they look like horizontal looking backwards and vertical looking forwards. I think the world is in one of these moments as we live through this platform shift and this technological revolution that I think is as big as any we've ever seen before. I'm very excited, super proud of the work the team has done to get to this point, but very excited for what this can be going forward. I think it can be one of these important new pieces of technological infrastructure for the world.
All right, and then lastly, we talked about identity, we talked about finance, somewhat loosely about community. But one of the things we've been thinking about actually for quite a while, and we know it sounds crazy, but it is that WorldCoin as a name just doesn't work anymore. And so starting today, what has been called WorldCoin will be just called World. And so that is it with the main talk for today. However, there's side talks happening, I think at 11:45. And then we also have a Q&A with me and Sam to answer many of the questions you might have later on. So thank you all for coming. It's a big honor to have you here. And we hope to have many exciting updates to share next year. Thank you.
Hi, good morning.
Why is it, when we want something to be more human, we never mean more logical, consistent, or more intelligent, even though humans can be all those things? Maybe it's because what really makes us human are our individual oddball twists. And revealing those cracks is what allows us to look in and see ourselves in each other and feel part of something bigger called the human race. History might argue this can only get us so far. But lucky for us, history is still being written. And if we know one thing about human beings, they are just surprising and unique and unpredictable enough to write a new history. No one else saw it coming.